just working with, it changes when we have new information and all that, but I think it's helpful for people that haven't worked with buyers before, or even if you have, it's just maybe a little bit different approach. We get buyers from a lot of different ways. Sometimes they walk in the door, sometimes we get them from the internet, from an ad call. There are all different ways to get buyers, and then sometimes you work with them online, sending them information and all that. That's a little bit different, although you can take some of the same tips. This little talk is sort of what I have done, and everybody's different. You may have a totally different approach. It's whatever works for you, but this seems to work for me.
Most everybody in here doesn't have an approach yet.
Okay. Well, if you don't have an approach,
we're glad it's good. Yeah.
And this is going to seem probably unbelievable that I do this, but I actually do almost everything every time. Occasionally I have to rush it up or whatever, but this is what I do. When I first sit down, I get them in the office, and sometimes this is done at McDonald's or someplace else, but I still do the same thing. I go with my little handy dandy folders that I have made up. You can have them done here at AgentOwned. They're plain white. We still have those. Mm-hmm. You can actually get a label made or something and put on it if you want to make it more personal. I have found that I get these from Vistaprint, and I change them every once in a while, but they have all my information in case my card gets lost, and it has pockets. And I've just found that this is real helpful to me. I've had clients that bring these back from out of town 3 or 4 times, or even a year later, and they come back with a little folder. So that's just a little tip. They're not expensive. In this folder, I go to the visitor center and I get maps and information in free things and put them in here. I actually do a little calendar that has area events and things and pictures I take. Sometimes I remember to put these in here, sometimes not. But I usually have a whole stack of stuff that's free. I buy the calendar, the maps, and put those in here. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to be the resource person for strangers that they go to, they rely on. And everything that I have in here is to make that connection with a perfect stranger, that I'm the person they go to, I'm the person that they think knows everything, I'm the person that is trying to build a relationship and a trusting relationship with people that I don't know. Hope I end up with that. I also think it's important to, in this folder, and this is a very poor example, to have at least a big yellow notepad. It shows that you, and you're going to take notes, it shows that you are a person that is going to write down what people say. And if you have a clipboard, it's even better, because then you look like you're in a position of authority. And you want to be the person in authority, because when people see a yellow notepad and a clipboard, they think you're like the regulator or something. But it's just these little things that help you be a professional instead of just a person with a little scrap piece of paper that they know you're going to lose. Or nothing. And I've seen people with nothing. But when you take notes, that really does help. Also in this folder, I have a stack of documents. It's pretty much everything you need to write a contract and information for the buyer. The reason I have this, I'll show you in a minute, but also I like to give my buyers this as their homework. These are all things that they need to study. They need to have their attorney review the contracts. I want them to have all this information to read later, but I'm going to go through it if I have the opportunity at the first meeting.
What kind of forms are those?
I start with, on top, I put the agency disclosure, because this is how you'll go through them. Agency disclosure, the privacy policy, the affiliated business arrangements, the buyer representation agreement, a sample agreement to buy and sell, which is a contract, the clauses for addendum, closing attorney information sheet, due diligence addendum, I think is in here, estimated closing costs, if they need to sell a house, why it's important to have these different inspections, global home warranty, types of homeowners coverage, just everything.
I know everybody's making notes, but they're supposed to put it in there.
It's everything you need. Might as well have it on hand, and you might as well give them a chance to review it. I mean, why not? Because it may, and I tell them, I say, you know, we may go out today and you may find a house, and we have to write this thing fast, and we need all this information. Now, I've done a little printout which you can have a copy of, so you don't have to take a lot of notes on this, which helps me go through this information so I won't lose my train of thought. Easy to do. All right. We talked about how you're going to get an appointment with a buyer different ways. Now, what I have found helpful is, I mean, a person walks in the door or they sit down, and we know we have to do agency disclosure, but it's not easy for me, and I don't think I've ever done it, is just say, I have to talk to you about agency disclosure before you say a word, because it's just not the way people are. What I usually do is, you know, they introduce themselves, and I try to start taking notes right then, you know, what are their names and all that. And they'll start, they know I'm a real estate agent. You know, maybe I've given them my card or introduced myself and all that. And they just want to talk. And my job at that point is to listen and be gracious and welcome to the area and just whatever. So I just start making notes and listen, because they've got this whole thing in their head. They've got this dream. You know, they've been visiting here for 10 years, they're thinking about retiring in 8 years, and they want to start looking. I've heard this a million times. And you write all that down. And, you know, they're just whatever information they want to give you. Along the way, you will get a couple of things. You will get an opportunity, because you know you have to do the agency disclosure. They'll either take a breath, because they've run out of information for you, and that's the time to say the next thing about agency disclosure. Or if they start talking about that they've saved up $100,000 in the special account and they can use all that for a down payment, that's when you say, stop, wait a minute, that's privileged information. Or that's what I do, and I think that's the best thing to do. Now, this morning I typed this out because I heard this in a class, and it sort of stuck in my head, and I've been trying to say this about at this point in the conversation. I say that I just need to tell them that I'm licensed to practice real estate, which is a regulated business. Regulated means there are laws that I have to follow, and those laws are for the purpose of protecting the public, protecting you as the buyer. And I have to tell you about agency disclosure at this point.
That's a really good intro to that.
And I've got a copy for you, because you might as well memorize that. Mm-hmm. When I heard it in the class, that's the only thing I remember in that whole class. Mm-hmm. I went, oh, whoa, that is good.
Well, can you, and I don't know if this is off, but what would you say when you're explaining agency disclosure?
We're going to do that.
Okay.
So I pull out the form. And at this point, you should be pretty much in control of the conversation. You've got the, you know, the yellow notepad and the stuff, and you talk about the law. And you can say, if they look at you like, I just thought you were a taxi driver. You can say, if they're, well, everybody's so different. I mean, you just kind of have to do what you think you can get away with as far as telling things. But if they look at me very distrustingly, I'll say, right here, I'll show them. And I go in the meeting with a yellow highlighter and 3 pens. You want to have 3 pens in case they read it all the time. And if there's more of them, you need more pens. Anyway, I say right here it says South Carolina Real Estate License Law in section whatever requires a real estate licensee to provide you with this brochure and a meaningful explanation of agency relationships offered by the licensee's company. This must be done at the first practical opportunity, and that's what we're doing right now, and I have to do it. It's this law. And they'll go, okay, because it's the law. What can they do?
I think that's great. That's a great way to present it.
One of the things Liz said to me was that until they sign that, you're working for the seller.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
You know, it was like,
wait a minute, I'm going to give you more information.
Shocking. More
ammunition and information about that. And you have to realize, I've come from 20-something years of doing this, and I'm not like I was when I first started out when I was much younger. So you can take some of this and use it, or you can do like I did and just be, you know, at their beck and call every minute and have nothing to work with. But this works better for me. This is what I do now. I kind of, you know, skim through and read this as much as you can. You'll get so you can do it pretty quickly. They're not going to listen that much, but at least you've done your duty. And I say, before you begin to work with a real estate licensee, you must know the difference between a broker in charge and associated licensee. The broker in charge is the person in charge of real estate company. I work for a broker in charge. And honestly, when I was highlighting this, it's the first time I really realized this said this, and I haven't exactly ever said it, but I'm going to now, and I highlight it. In other words, when you choose to work with any real estate licensee, your business relationship is legally with the company and not with the associated licensee. That's what it says.
Yes.
Now, I have said, when you sign this, I will be helping you, but actually it's my company that represents you, and somebody else needs to show you we still all represent. So I sort of said the same thing, but I'm going to start reading this because I think it's important. We provide valuable real estate services in the form of basic customer services or through client-level agency representation. And I stopped at that point and I said, I work with clients. That's my choice. I work with clients. And they don't know what you're talking about, but we're going to get into it. Right now, you're a customer. When these people walk in the door, they're a customer. And I say, you are a customer. South Carolina license law defines customers as buyers or sellers who choose not to establish an agency relationship. The basic duties that we have are present all offers in a timely manner, account for money or other property received on your behalf, provide an explanation of the scope of services, be fair and honest, disclose adverse facts about the property, which we are aware of. As a customer, you should not expect the company or its licensees to promote your best interests or to keep your bargaining information confidential, and that's where we are right now. For you to become a client, which is why I'm sitting here and the reason I work with people in real estate, because I work with clients. I work on your behalf and promote your best interests. If you choose to become a client, you will be asked to confirm in your written representation agreement that you received this brochure in a timely manner. You will need to sign a formal buyer agency agreement. And my duties on client level services are obedience, loyalty, disclosure, let's read it right down, and I highlight as I read. Confidentiality, accounting, reasonable care and skill, and advice and assistance. Advice, counsel, and assistance in negotiations. Our company also practices disclosed dual agency, which means we can represent buyers and sellers at the same time. And we also practice designate, which is disclosed dual agency is less representation for either side. We just have to be neutral. It's hard to do. We also practice designated agency. That would happen if you, the buyer, decides to look at and purchase something I have listed. Or no, something another agent my company has listed. Dual agency is if I have it listed. If another agent has it listed, then that agent would be designated to represent the seller, and I would be designated to be your buyer's agent. And those agency relationships flow up to my broker in charge, who is a dual agent. And remember that until you enter into a representation agreement with the company, you are considered a customer, and the company cannot be your advocate, cannot advise you on price or terms, and cannot keep your confidences. Now, at that point, that's when it gets a little tricky. And you have to kind of see, like they might say, oh, that's fine, we'll sign anything. And you just pull it on out and sign it. And you go ahead and get the disclosure of affiliated business arrangements signed, and you tell them we offer these different services. And that's real good to explain at the first opportunity, because they might go out and get a loan someplace else, and we might be able to do better. And then the privacy policy, go ahead and get that signed. Now, if they say, okay, we're ready to sign, then you pull out, I use the buyer representation agreement, and I tell them, well, here it is, it's in compliance with South Carolina law right here. And we talk about how long it's going to last, and I talk about the fact that the one I use, the form I use, says that it can be canceled by either party upon written notice. And then I start asking them, like, what price range and all that, and how I get paid. I talk about that. And the fact that they're not under one of these with somebody else or another company. And that I've explained agency, and we talk about if they might consider dual or designated agency. They don't have to, but they can put that on here. And they understand that I may be showing other buyers the same property. And sometimes they just go ahead and sign it, and that's good. And then you can go look at properties and put it in your car. If they say, we're not signing anything, our lawyer said don't sign anything, or my brother said don't sign anything, I go, well, while you're here, do you mind, let me show you what we do? Because in some states, they don't have this. In some states, only attorneys do contracts. They may not be familiar with this at all. So while I've got them there, I just go ahead and make them, if they will, make them listen to the rest. Which is information that you're giving them, valuable information, and you hope that you are selling your services and the way we do real estate in this area. So then I say, well, let me just explain a few things because I need for you to understand what it is we do and why we have all these forms and how we practice real estate here. And sometimes this stuff is not in this exact order. You just have to be creative and use your own best judgment on this. But usually I pull out the contract and I tell them, I say, this is the contract, and if it's a condominium or land or something like that, you might want to pull the other right form for that. But I say, when you get ready to purchase something, purchase a property, this is the contract that will most likely be used. And I'll tell them these are things that we need to know ahead of time. And I just highlight purchase price, property, when it's going to close, when the property's going to close, how much earns money, who's paying for the closing costs, how the property's being financed, or is it cash? And you need to know all those details to fill in, which is a good reason to go ahead and get them pre-qualified, even at the first meeting. We talk about the repair procedure or the due diligence procedure in the home inspection and repair procedure options that we have. Sometimes they have a lot of questions about that. When they walk in the door, they think that they're just going to look at a bunch of pretty properties, and that's it. But really, they don't want to buy a problem. They don't want to buy a lemon usually. They want to make sure they're not getting into a mess. And so these things are to help them realize that these things are covered in the contract, and it's to protect their interests. I talk about inspection and reinspection rights, because sometimes they never even thought about, they think their dream home is going to be perfect, and they're not going to have any problems. They've got it all in their heads. But the reality is, we all know, or some of us have found out the hard way, is that most properties have a lot of problems, even new homes. And depending on how many questions they have, this may take a good bit of time to go through, and it should. And I want to tell you a valuable, for those of you that are new into sales, I want to tell you some valuable information I learned in the class years ago, and I found it to be very true. In sales, a lot of people are afraid of and shy away from when they start getting hit with objections, because nobody likes to deal with negative, people and questions and this and that. And what I learned in that class was, be glad for objections. Ask open-ended questions. Get it all out, because objections are actually buying signs. If people are not going to do anything or they're not interested, they won't say anything, and you won't even know what they're worried about. So welcome objections. Pull them out. Here's how you handle objections. The first thing you do is you get your little pad and you write down the objection. And the reason you write it down is you want to make sure that you understand that. And if that's important to the buyer, it needs to be dealt with in a contract. Or you need to figure it out ahead of time or do something with it. Don't just sit there and let it go out the window. The next thing you do is you say, I want to read this back or make sure I understand. So you repeat their objections. Is this what you said, or is this what you meant? Whatever it is. And you nod your head. You always nod your head. Because what you're trying to do with this objection is you're trying to get it out of them, so they won't just sit there and hold it and not tell you what it is. Because if you don't know, you can't solve it or can't get around it. But it also builds rapport, because you want to be getting on the same side of the fence and be their ally in this process. So you repeat the objection. I understand, blah, blah, and you agree with me, say, I agree with you that that is an important thing, or whatever it is, I agree with you. Because it's their feeling, and it is serious, and it is, to them, it's very important. It might not be, you know, they might say, I don't want to live, I'm worried about living in an area where there are hurricanes. Well, we can all agree that that is a concern, and you repeat it and make sure that that's what it is. I've had some of them that say, I don't want to live anywhere near water that there are alligators. And, you know, that's an objection, and you work around that. So you agree with them. You're not agreeing that they're right, you're agreeing that that's their objection. And the next thing is, then you go on, it's just like you're stepping over a mud puddle. You just kind of walk around it or step over it, and you go on, how can we work this out, or this is what we do here, or there's alligators walking down the street in shopping centers here. I mean, occasionally, they're not just around water. But anyway, whatever it is, the more that people tend to think they're going to say something negative, and you're going to be an enemy. And they're not going to want to work with an enemy. They're going to work with somebody that's right there with them looking at the alligator. You know, let's look at it, see where did it come from, and what do people do here, and all that. So. We talk about appraised value. We talk about wood infestation report. People come from other areas that do not have termites or wood rot or anything like that. They have no clue. So they may have a lot of questions, or they may totally understand that. We talk about a survey and title insurance. We talk about home warranties. And this is an opportunity, I mean, this takes like an hour sometimes, or longer. If they don't have any time, just mention the topics, and Sam will give this to you to read, and you call me if you have any questions or email. We talk about the property disclosure, property condition disclosure. We talk about lead paint. And I talk about attachments and other contingencies a little bit in this other addendum that we use. Because right now, you have just become a legal person. You're not practicing law, but this is a legal document, and you're in charge of the legal document, and you have it. And they understand that we'll be working with this. And some of them say, well, only our attorney does this, and you say, well, they have the right to do that. Then I talk about this addendum that we have that I feel like it's important to always include, because that's the only way you can make deed restrictions and restrictive covenants part of the contract, because they have a chance to review that. We talk about the Coastal and Tidelands Wetlands Act if they're buying something on the water, on salt water, where there's a setback line and a critical line, and erosion. We talk about soil and water tests if there's some reason they want to do that. Here again, it goes into the financing information. You might have already covered all that, but it might be something in here that's different. And there's a check mark for hazardous materials. Some people come from areas where they have to have radon tests, and they're real worried about that. So they can do, you know, that can be what they want to do, part of it. Has anybody ever done all this at the first meeting? I'm the only one. Actually, almost always. Since probably for 15 years I've done it that way.
Well, really, I think everybody in the room except Jenny and Randy, maybe Donna, are new to the business, basically.
Okay. This is something you need to practice with someone else, each other, because you're going to be really worried about this taking forever, or they'll have all kind of questions and you won't know what to do. But if you practice and practice and read it and fill these out like you're buying, pick out a property, any property, and fill out these contracts for yourself. Say you're a certain type of buyer, just make up a buyer, and then you fill it out as if you were purchasing that, and then you'll read every single thing in it and get familiar with it. I also show them this form that says why you should obtain each: a home inspection, CL 100, appraisal, surveys, owner's title insurance. And I'll talk about a home warranty a little bit.
Susan, you mentioned home warranty. With our new E&O policy, if there's a warranty on the property and there's litigation, the deductible is cut in half.
Deductible for the air
Yeah.
conditioning?
You know.
That's important. It's real important that there's a home warranty on property, and if the buyer or seller won't pay for it, sometimes I pay for it, just to make sure I don't have a problem later on, that it's as big a problem as it could have been.
I'm not sure I understood the scenario there, Mr. Boyd. What was that? There was litigation under a previous home warranty for someone?
No, if a warranty is on the property, if you sell a warranty on the property and there's litigation, there's a E&O problem,
Okay.
the deductible is half. Your portion, the deductible on the policy right now is $10,000.
The E&O policy?
The E&O
Okay,
policy.
gotcha.
If you should get sued.
And the agent is responsible for half of that, which is $5,000. But if you've got an E&O, if you've got a warranty, then you would be responsible for $2,500 rather than $5,000.
Another good reason to put home warranties
Yeah.
on every property.
Glad to hear that.
That is very important. I mean, it's money well spent.
Even if they decide they didn't want a warranty, we don't want to do that, the owner doesn't want to pay for it, the buyer doesn't want to pay for it.
You can pay for it.
But
Susan
even
does
if they
that.
turned it, yeah, but even if they turned it down,
They-
if you have a form, you can still get sued because they had something break in there?
Well, I don't think they would turn it down if I paid for it.
Well, I know they wouldn't turn it down, but I just don't see why the agent has to feel they need to pay $600 or whatever. I'm
Well,
just saying.
Susan pretty much does it on all of hers. If she can't get the buyer or seller to do it, she'll do it. But pretty much the buyers or sellers, one will do it.
All right, at that point, if you still have somebody sitting there, now this is where it gets into just my personal decision. If they're sitting there, because I'll go back at that point, if they haven't signed the buyer's representation agreement, and I'll say, now let's get back to this buyer's representation agreement. Are you willing to sign this now for me and my company to be your buyer's representative? And they'll probably say no. And I'll say, what about for today, while we're riding around, just for one day? And I'll say, because, I kind of have to judge it, because people are just so different. If, we might have a little rapport that's, there's some joking around and that sort of thing, and I might say, well, I need you to sign this for today, or because I'm not going to put you in my car and ride you around and use my gas and be a taxi service. So if you're not willing to commit to me for one day, then I can't do it. And just laugh, and they'll usually say, oh, we'll sign it. Oh, we don't mind that, just for one day. I mean, because really, I don't have to. I can say, there might be another agent here that'll do it, or I'll print out some properties and you can ride around and call me if you want to see anything. But you have to realize, if you spend your gas and your time and your effort, you may never, and they find the property and they go straight to the listing agent, or they expect you to work for them, you may not get paid as a sub-agent. They might not be offering compensation to a sub-agent. And you really you can't represent that person. And you don't have to, and it's just going to get you in a mess. And I just don't do it. I can't say I don't. I did do it recently.
99% of the time.
It was a buyer who was a real estate agent, and her license was inactive, and she said, don't sign those things. So I said, well, I'll ride you around, but don't ask me any questions. So anyway, it is a case-by-case basis. But hopefully, after all this information, you can get them to sign this, or you can get them to sign it for one day. Or you can just say, I think it's best that, since you're going to put me in a bad situation, then I'll help you with information, but then you need to ride around yourself. And that's pretty strong, but actually...
And also, just another point up there, like along those lines, if you're going to show somebody one house, you can always do a buyer agreement for one property too.
Just one property. Mm-hmm. And then you can go back and say, well, this is the law, and this is what we have to do. And that's just what I have to do. That's the way we work.
I think a lot of New York people especially feel like you have to have a 6-month or a year buyer agreement. You just don't. You can do it for any length of time.
I've done a lot of them for one day. I've done a lot of them for one property.
And you've done a lot of them for a year.
I've done a lot of them for a year. But especially in this day and age where buyers think they know everything, they think they do it all online. The reason why I go over these contracts is because that's something that we can do that they can't do online, or they might be able to, but that's not the way we practice real estate. And they don't understand that. They think the only reason they need us is because we can get in the houses. They don't understand all this. And actually, this is as important sometimes, or more important than the house they're buying, because it's a huge investment. There are lots of problems out there and lots of protection that they need, and they don't understand that usually, most people. Some of them have owned property a long time, but they haven't bought anything in 30 years, and things were all different back then. All right, at that point, once I get this signed, then I say, all right, now it's time to see what properties you might want to see. And sometimes you already know, like that you've been back and forth, or they bring them into you that they found on the internet, and you look them up, they're all under contract. I know you had that happen. or sold 6 months ago.
But it was on Zillow.
Yeah. But we do live in, I mean, that is something we spend a lot of time researching things that are not available. Gosh, I can't tell you the people I've had come into town with a stack of stuff they want to see, and it's all gone, and there's nothing for them at all, and they're so mad at me and so disappointed because they did all this research and they think it's all available. Has anybody else seen that? All right, this is a very big tip. This is secret information I'm giving you. Huge. Before you do any of this, starting today, make sure you have seen every new home community that you could possibly be showing to anybody. Preview the models, get their information sheets, get the prices, go act like you're a buyer, because we're all buyers, you know. Say, oh, you know, I'm thinking about buying a one level. What if you got one level? What if you know, things that you might get a call about. And, you know, work up a whole price on something. Find out the best lot that's available. What lots do you have that this house would fit on? Spend all afternoon with these agents. Get the prices, everything else. Because over the years, I cannot tell you how many times I've had buyers come in with all this stack of houses to see. We've got all these appointments they want, everything else. And I say, the first thing we're going to do is go look at the new home communities. And the reason for that is, for them, is because you're going to be comparing used houses with what you might be able to get new. And new might be, it's got a warranty, everything's new, you're not going to have maintenance. There are a lot of reasons why you want to compare used houses with new. They might be a more up-to-date floor plan, the amenities might be better, but that's going to be your comparison. You also want to go out there and register that buyer. You register that buyer so they won't run out there right after you spend all day with them and go buy something that you could have already had them registered for. I've learned that the hard way over the years 2 or 3 times, and I won't do it anymore.
When you say register them.
When you walk in the door in those new home communities and there's an agent, they'll ask for the register, and you know you can fill it out as a person, but they put your card, and that person, they know that you brought that person in. And they're supposed, well, I can't say that always protects you, but 9 times out of 10 it starts a relationship. Now, I have taken people out there and we look at the lot. Here, we've got appointments all day. And we go out there and look at this happened recently. We look at a new home. They've got a couple 2 or 3 lots available. One of them is by far superior to any of the other ones. And we left that day with a contract. We never looked at anything else. That can happen. They didn't want to see anything else after they saw this fancy model, brand new, all pretty trees, everything else. They said, forget it, we don't want to see anything else. So that's just essential. Okay. Say you've gone and looked at all the houses that they want to see. Say they have, they came in, you got them pre-qualified, or they came in pre-qualified. They know what they want to do financing-wise. They know the cash that they have and all that. And they picked out a house, they want to make an offer. You might have been doing this for a week or 2 or 2 or 3 days or different visits, or you're a little bit further along, although it can happen the first day. You might it's a good idea to check with the listing agent to make sure the house is still available, don't just look on MLS. I know that sounds simple, but there have been people that brought me offers and the house went under contract 3 hours before, you know, and they spent time fooling with an offer. So, you know, contact the listing agent to make sure it's still available. But don't give them a whole lot of time because you don't want them sitting there calling everybody else in the world to bring an offer in. Then you print out the full listing. Don't give the one with the agent notes to the buyer. You know that you can't let that out of your hands. But there's information you need. Print out the seller's disclosure. Print out the lead paint disclosure if there is one. By the way, it's extremely important when you're dealing with a house that's built in or before 1978 to make sure that you give them a copy of that lead paint protect your family pamphlet, or get it offline, you can get off the internet, and make sure that they have a chance to read that, because a lot of people just, I think, are just doing the lead paint disclosure, don't ever give them the pamphlet. Because the pamphlet, it says that they give them a copy of the pamphlet, and I hope they have, but just make sure that you do, and make sure that they understand that there's information that they're supposed to read to protect their family. Especially in an area where people have done a lot of renovation. They might be looking at this real cute house on James Island that was done when they had that home show, and they went in there and redid houses, and they probably didn't do any EPA lead paint protection or anything. So they need to read all that. You want to print out the property report in MLS. You want to print out the tax record, just to see if the property tax has been paid and how much they really are were for the past year. The listing history, the comparables, and if you can get them, the covenants and deed restrictions. A lot of those are online. Go ahead and get those, or look at it, you know, have them. Maybe there's something they have a question about, but it's nice to have all of that at the time before you write the contract, right, Liz?
Absolutely.
Why do you print out the listing history, per chance? Just
You want to see if that house has been on the market every year, they can't sell it, price reductions, how many offers were contingent and fell through, for a lot of reasons. Maybe it's only been listed for 3 days or a week, and then that's going to be a hotter property than one that they haven't been able to sell in 5 years. And you won't know unless you happen to have shown it or something. If there have been sales that have fallen through, you might want to call the agent and find out why. It may be that there's mold or something or other, you know, some problem that listing history is extremely important. It's important to know if they've reduced and maybe would be open to a much lower offer. Or maybe higher than full price if it's brand new and it's underpriced. So just those things. And then you must, like when writing up an offer, you must include for the office file and for your records the signed buyer's agency agreement, privacy policy, affiliated business arrangement, the correct contract depending on which kind of property they're buying. And by the way, print those out and study them because they are different. You might have taken classes, but they might not cover all of them. They have a few different things in them. I even have to print them out once in a while and look at them because they change.
These people that come to my class, they know the right one.
Okay.
But not everybody comes to the class.
Additional clauses, the flood insurance disclosure addendum. Now this is and that's something that I think it's in here. That is something, going back up, I'm sorry I left that out. But when you first meet with them, that's one thing you need to discuss is flood insurance, give them that disclosure addendum. They may have a lot of questions. You might want to go on the FEMA website and look at it right then. But when you print out that property report, it'll have the flood zone at the bottom, although somebody told me that's kind of outdated. So
yeah, and actually, I just had one that was not correct.
right. And you need to tell them that to really know what the flood insurance is, you need to get a quote from an insurance agent.
From either Allstate or Alliance.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what, they were actually wrong as well. I had to go to the James Island Lands and Management, and they were very helpful. And they said to me, well, actually, the flood line is right through the middle of that house. So, yeah, it was kind of confusing, but it was the town park one. Yeah.
And that's true.
Yeah.
That's
Because
true.
all the other stuff was not accurate, all
Right.
the information in the MLS, so. yeah.
And we need to tell them that, this may not be accurate, this is what we have, here's the website, but when it comes to actually getting your flood insurance, there might be a different situation.
For what he told me, they're getting ready to redraw everything in the next 6 months, so it should.
Nobody knows the dates on it.
Yeah.
They're all gonna be redrawing, but nobody knows when.
Nobody knows, yeah. Okay.
At this point, anyway.
And it's important, I think it's important to tell people that we, it's so up in the air right now, we just really don't know what's gonna happen. We don't know how the new maps are gonna be, how they're gonna include different properties that are not in a special flood hazard area. And another thing, I've heard this so many times, I've had listing agents say, oh, this house is not in a flood zone, you don't need flood insurance.
Yeah.
You know, those are the two things
Never
I feel
say.
you never say that. Because it's my understanding, every house is in some kind of flood zone, of some kind, X or whatever. You might have a house that's in a special flood hazard area, and we all need flood insurance. What I say is there's no magic wall that comes up and stops the flood. It can go anywhere. And I tell buyers that my stepdaughter's house up on the side of a mountain in Virginia flooded during Hurricane Floyd. Water rushed down the mountain. It could not get down the mountain fast enough, and it ran through her house. So,
Do you ever suggest that maybe they should look into the price of flood? Just, you never know, pipes or whatever, that they should just check out or we could do that, expedite that process for them? Just, I mean, some of it could maybe be $30 a month for not being in not being in an actual flood zone, but it's always good just to have it anyway.
well, I just tell them that I have flood insurance on my properties and they're
Okay.
not in a special flood hazard area.
Right.
I would not think
That's
of
what I was
not having flood insurance anywhere.
Right.
After what
Okay.
I've read on
Probably
the single
smart to do
website.
that.
Right. Yeah. And then they said, how much is yours? And I tell them it's around $400 a year.
Yeah, not a lot per month if you break it down.
Seller's disclosure and the lead paint disclosure, we talked about that. And then they need to decide on the inspection clause or due diligence addendum. And I'm sure Liz has covered that in classes. This is very confusing to me. There are a lot of ins and outs on both choices. I've seen some things come up that are pretty scary, and I don't think we've seen some of the problems yet, but I think there are problems like if, for instance, if you have a home inspection and you present the repairs, and what if the seller just doesn't say anything? Well, then you've got to decide, the buyer has to decide if they're going to terminate the contract or buy it as is, or wait for the, I mean, your hands are kind of tied. And and these contracts say what's going to happen after a certain period of time.
Pretty much what I've been teaching is that if you're representing a buyer, I think that the best thing to do is due diligence. But when you use due diligence, you better be paying attention yourself
Right.
to the dates and what's going on. We talk about that a lot.
I'd like to follow up on that question, Susan, because when you're meeting with these people, at what point do you tell them about the reality of some of this stuff, like what real flood insurance might be for a price like $5,000 a year, not $400? You know what I'm saying?
I tell them. I tell them that we saw some real scary flood insurance rates there for a while. I think that law has been postponed for 4 years.
Well, found this on the copier. I made a copy of it up there, but $5,000 with a $2,100 discount for a $230,000 home.
Well, we've seen 25,000
Yeah.
a year.
So it's.
But don't we have more competition now, like Lloyd's of London and all that, we're not just holding to you, huh?
Well, I think
True,
private insurance companies are going to be stepping in.
That's what-
But
Look, we do have contacts with Lloyd's of London for
Okay.
that flood insurance.
And has that been enacted yet, where they're doing that?
Terry's writing policies through
Oh,
it.
okay, great, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, I guess where do you give them? This costs us money to get some dissolution. I guess it's.
But I want to give them reality.
Right.
I tell them that I personally would not buy anything in a special flood hazard area right now.
You tell them that?
Well, it's true, I wouldn't. But there are things, I don't know everything about it, I'd have to go talk to the insurance people, but I don't think they know everything either, because there's just so much up in the air. And then the flood maps could change everything.
I think that the more that you, the more, not negatives, but the more things that you say, such as, I would not buy that house, don't buy that house, the more times you do things like that, the more trust you build with the people. So that they know that you really are not just trying to sell them a house. I mean, you are looking after their interests and be extremely picky like you are. That's
One of the
why you're
reasons
so
I asked that
successful.
question, Lisa, you're right, I wouldn't buy this, it's got this.
Oh, well, it's tone too.
Well, I know, but I'm saying you need to be careful, there's a lot of fix-up stuff, I would, I take this one over that one, I go, well, I like fixing stuff up.
Well, they do.
Oh, that's good.
I didn't know that at first, so now I started, unless you like fixing things up.
Well, and everybody's different. I mean, there's some people that go, well, I think it's gonna all work out, it's fine.
Well, and also the fact is that no one really knows when the lines get redrawn,
Right.
if this house is gonna be in it or not in it.
Right.
And a house that's not in it today might be in it then.
That's right.
So,
Right.
That's true.
Or, and not even just about flood zones, selling a condo, they may be able to get financing on it now, they may not be able to sell it later. And so you would tell them, I don't know about this, I'm sure. So, anyway.
In one class I took, the instructor was talking about how when you represent buyers, it's like the property's in a big balloon, and you're trying to punch holes in that balloon as much as possible for reasons they shouldn't buy it. And if the balloon's still there with all those holes, then, go ahead and buy it. But I've just found over the years that full disclosure, honesty, what's best for the buyer is the best policy. And I tell them I'm very conservative. I know a lot about things that can happen to properties, and I don't want to see any of that happen to them. And they seem to know that. So. Then when you get the offer written, and this sounds simple, but of course you submit it to the listing agent by fax. I do it by fax, email, I call, and I text every way possible to let them know that it's submitted. And copy myself.
and do you follow up with them to make sure they got it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I say, call me back, text me, whatever, Because you don't just want to send it and because sometimes things don't get to people, or they're real busy, or like me, I get so many emails a day from vendors and things like that, I might just miss it.
Donna just got one the other day, but the agent emailed her, but she didn't attach anything.
That can happen,
Yeah.
And I questioned her about her subject line. I said, oh, I like the subject line, contract, whatever. She said, didn't you get it? And I said, no.
Right.
So that's why you need to follow up with, and make sure that they got whatever you sent.
Well, that's about it. Does anybody have any questions?
Where did you say you got your folders from Vistaprint?
I get these from Vistaprint. You go online and design them yourself and put whatever information on there. I have different ones. I have some that are for waterfront property.